Welcome to the Vincent Crowley channel. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Mike Browning. May 17th, Nocturnus A.D. released the new album Unicursal on Profound Lore Records. Today we're going to talk to my old friend about the album and get some more details and answer a few questions from viewers. So how you doing, Mike? Welcome
All right,
back.
man. Yeah, it's good to see you again, Vince. It's always great to have conversations with you, and we go back so far. It's always good because we always have a lot to talk about.
Yeah. Our last video got a lot of good responses and people still writing about to this day. So they're looking forward to this. Uh, there's a, I want to mostly touch base on the album, and then afterwards, if we got time, we can answer some other questions from viewers if you're up to it. But
Sure, definitely.
first off, this fucking album is amazing. I and like I talked before, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I would, if I didn't know you, I would buy this album and I would put it on top of my list for this year of releases. Killer CD. Um, Belial sent me the actual physical copy. I Profound Lore sent me the advance to listen to on the computer, but man, it sounds so much better in my stereo. And wow, the experience is amazing. How do you think this album rates with all the previous stuff you've done?
Well, yeah, it took us a while to do the album, and we did put a lot into it. So I was hoping it would come out, good. And we took several years, because of COVID and stuff, writing. And I think that helped us a lot because some bands they try to put out an album every year or two, and a lot of the albums have like some really good songs on them and some that they just had to finish the album. You could tell with they, especially a long time ago when people used to put out albums, they only would put a hit or two on an album, and the rest of it was what they called filler. And
Right.
I don't want to do an album with a bunch of filler songs on it just to get the 45 minutes out of it. We have over an hour of music, and everything was kind of planned the way it was supposed to be, and
Right.
it came out a little bit longer than we wanted.
Uh,
But some of the songs were longer than they should have been probably. But when you're working on it, you kind of get immersed in it, and you don't really realize how long something is or how far it's going. But
yeah.
that was the thing. We got a lot of time to work on it. We recorded it on weekends, so and there was a lot of stops, and it took us literally 6 months to record the album because there was like vacation times, there was holidays, there was Jarrett was doing tours, so we
Mm,
literally record like 2 weekends in a row, and then take like 2 weekends off, and then get back in for one weekend, and then take another 2 weekends off, and then get back in for another weekend.
yeah.
So I mean, we probably spent 2 weeks actually about recording the record as far as day wise, but it was over a long time, which does give you the possibility to sit back and listen to what you did do that weekend and go, oh, I want to change this, or I want to
I,
add this to it or something. So that was the good thing about it.
yeah. Well, some bands, like it's mentioned, they'll, especially the touring bands, they'll put out an album, tore their asses off, and then they got a small window to record write and record the album. And, sometimes you get exactly that. You get a rushed album. Some bands
I don't
do it.
see how they I don't see
Yeah.
how they do that.
That's why I always give props to Cannibal Corpse, man. It's like as much as shit as they do, I don't know how they make such good albums and pour so much and do so much stuff. It's like
Yeah,
amazing.
it's yeah, when you see a band that tours like 8 or 9 months out of the year and then they still put out a killer album, it's like, how do you guys, where do you find the time to do all this stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Well, talking about this with the whole writing process, how do you guys start that? Do you come up with your lyrical and story concepts first, or do you take the songs, write the music, and then write the stories to them?
But it's kind of different because I do all the lyrics, so I kind of keep that separate. And as far as that, I have what happens is I get like a song title in my head and an idea, and I'll literally, put it in my notes on my phone. Like I got like 20 song titles.
Okay, yeah.
And each song title pretty much gives me the ability to come up with the story behind the song title.
Mhm.
So I have that going on all the time, pretty much. And then as far as the writing and the music, we practice here at my house. So we have written that whole album was written in the practice room, and nobody brought in like a couple riffs even together. Yeah, so like Damien will bring in a riff, like, hey, I got this riff, and we'll start on that, and then I'll literally, once we kind of get a beat down and stuff for it, and start working on it, and then I'll look at Belial and go, okay, now it's your turn, throw out a riff,
Right.
and then Josh will be like, hey, I can come up with this keyboard idea here and see if you could put some guitar to it. So the whole album was written that way, but in the room, without anybody coming in and going, oh, I got like half a song written, or I've got a whole song written and recorded,
Right.
and I put a drum machine to it, and here, learn this. A lot of bands do that. One person does all the writing, and literally does a lot of it with a drum machine and stuff, and then brings it in, and the rest of the band just learns it. Or they record a whole idea and then send it to the other guys in the band, and then they add
Right.
their stuff to it, and then but we didn't do anything like that. This whole album was written in the practice room with everybody there.
Oh, wow. That's very rare. That's definitely, especially with people's schedules and stuff. It's really hard to make time for that. So that's interesting.
That's probably another reason why it took so long to write the album,
Right.
because sometimes we've used whole practices and only came up with like a third of a song or a half a song, because we want to make sure everything fits and kind of works. But after we write the music, we literally had like 6 songs written, music wise,
Right.
and then I would go back and like look at the song titles and see like, hey, this song kind of fits this title, and
Right.
I think I want this song to be this song, so the titles that I have, I then I go after the music's done, I listen to the music a few times, several times actually, and then say, okay, I think this title is the one that's going to be this song, and then I think this. Then I start working on lyrics. But when we were writing too, I keep in mind uh, where I want to put lyrics and where we want to put solos and bridges and things like that. So we'll write a part. Okay, this one's going to go 16 times because we're going to have a guitar solo, then a keyboard solo, then a guitar solo, then a keyboard solo, then a guitar solo. So there you got like 8 measures of stuff right there, easy. So it's kind of like when we're writing the song, I do a lot of the arranging when we're writing. Like,
Okay.
let's do this 8 times, let's do this 4 times. They come up with the riffs, of course, but I do a lot of the. I'm pretty good at arranging and figuring out where the bridge should go and how long this should be and how long that should be, or let's extend this, or maybe change this to a chopping instead of a picking, thing, and little things like that. And everybody's good with listening to everybody else. Nobody goes, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So what
You
if
ever have like a line from a lyric or something that you're like, we need to put some part because these lyrics need to go here that need to be sung a certain way? Do you do stuff like that?
Well, I mean, I know it's weird the way I write my lyrics is more like narrative and or first person, and they go along with the drums more than the melody.
Mhm.
That's My lyrics are more percussive than melodic for sure.
Right. Right.
It's weird. Some of the lyrics I write, like I've written the lyrics and I can barely even fit them into the song sometimes, because some of the lyrics are expressive, like
Right.
especially like stuff like Mesolithic, where you got a lot of terms of things,
Hmm.
and those words are like sometimes they're very not easy to pronounce, and they're long, and they're
Yeah.
technical type words, and to fit that in the music, that's why I have to do narrative stuff sometimes, because it almost works better. I mean, my vocals could have been heavier on the record, and I think the reasoning that it didn't come out was because I kind of rushed the vocals near the end, like the lyrics, I should say, getting the lyrics all down right before we recorded, and I never really got the chance to sing and play these songs. So some of these songs I was literally trying to fit stuff in the studio and make it work.
I mean, I think it worked. I mean, you have a absolute style that you know it's you. So, and you kept that, and like a lot of things, I like bands, no matter how heavy they are, that you can understand the lyrics.
Yeah, I do too.
It's I can appreciate someone get real fucking deep and shit, but if I can't understand the fucking songs, it kind of loses it for me. I want to hear what the stories are about or what the content is about. And some bands are just like so fucking heavy and brutal, it's you can't understand them. That's why I kind of think I resonate the more the older bands, because the original death metal you could at least understand the lyrics.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I mean, I've literally, wondered that too about what is this guy saying here? Because I'll see the song title, then I'll start reading the lyrics, and then I'll listen to the music along with the lyrics. I'm like, that's not even what he's saying right there. Some of it.
right,
I'm like, wait
right,
a minute, these lyrics don't even fit with what I think I'm hearing. And I'm
right,
looking at the lyrics and listening to the song, and I'm like, and I'm like, that isn't even what's written down. It
right.
doesn't even match. So I mean, I like heavy lyrics. Don't get me wrong,
Mhm.
but or singing style, but
Right,
it's not me. It never has been. And
right.
I don't know. I guess when you get older, you want to make things more legible.
I mean, but like I said, you have a certain style that people can tell who you are. It's one of those things you could sing in any band and we're gonna know it's Mike Browning. That's your style. And I think a lot of bands nowadays they all get clumped in that category where, like we talked about before, bands from when we were growing up, they were heavy fucking bands, but you could tell the different bands, the styles of vocally and everything. And now,
Yeah,
some death metal, yeah, are they brutal as fuck and deep as fuck? Are they heavier than ours? Fuck yeah, but a lot of them sound the same. I would rather be distinguished for what we do than, what I mean, than just be who can get the deepest or the sickest and shit. Or
yeah.
so,
I mean,
no,
your singing too. Take example is very unique as well, and you even brought it a little bit more unique on the new album that you have out, the Vincent Crowley album. And
yeah,
it's like I think I think I think I like unique. I mean, that's why I loved King Diamond when I first heard him. I was like, I've never heard anything like this before.
oh,
Slayer
yeah,
when they first came out, he was doing those highs and stuff, and I actually liked that. And
mhm,
I couldn't do it, but
right,
I tried doing some highs here and there, and it just didn't work.
yeah,
So I kind of just stick with what I can do. But it's more narrative, I guess, like I would say, because the songs themselves have now, since Dr. Magus is a character, a real character. On the key, he didn't have a name; he wasn't a real character, so it was kind of anonymous type stuff, and it kind of loosely fit together. But with
right,
Paradox, I gave him a name, I gave him an outlet,
mhm,
and the songs on there and this one, a lot of them are first person narrative where I'm going, I did this and I did that, because he's basically telling a story through his experiences.
right, right. No, it definitely works, man. Um, and talking about that, the one thing I really like about this album is each one has its own feel that fits the story. I you guys did a great job creating that differences between the songs. And did you guys, after you structured the songs, because the sounds and the effects, they fit the storylines and they present a great atmosphere for what you're talking about in each song. Um, what did you do to kind of get that feel?
Well, we do write with the keyboard player there, so a lot of what's in the songs,
Mm-hmm.
of course, we kind of come up with during the writing process. So, like, like certain parts, like when I'm hitting the snare to make a keyboard sound go like that instead of an effect in the studio. Now
Right.
we can have John do it with a sample. He can just hit
Oh,
the
okay.
key,
Yeah.
you know, and writing about sci-fi stuff gives you a really good possibility of throwing in a lot of weird sounds and not necessarily keyboards like where black metal would use them as symphonic or choir,
Right.
and we have that, but also we have a lot of weird stuff that just he has now he's using two different keyboards, so one of them's more a sampler than anything, so it's got a lot of weird sounds in it that we throw in there on top of the music, and some of it's done after, but also like I mentioned, fitting the song title with the music. So when we had 6 songs already written, I went back and said, okay, this song title really works with this music.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of helps a lot too. But and then the intros we always usually write after all the songs are done,
Right.
um, and the lyrics are done, and then we kind of go back and put together weird intros. I worked with Josh a lot on the intros. He would come over here and we'd put together the intros, and then he would go back and add even more stuff to them.
Right.
So it's kind of like, yeah, we do take the music first, kind of, and then the lyrics, and then add a lot of the stuff in after. But most of it, we try to make sure we can do live too. Some of it, maybe not, is going to come across exactly like it is live. Like Belial does some double neck 12 string
I
in a
seen
couple
that.
parts in a couple of songs. And, that's not going to be really possible live unless we do a local show and he wants to bring his double neck guitar and play it for the whole song.
Right. Pull Jimmy
But
Page.
yeah, exactly. He looks like his guitar basically, and he's got a really nice double neck guitar, so 12
Right.
string. So it's kind of cool. He wanted to really use it,
Yeah, I bet.
and so let's make a part. So a lot of the stuff you hear on there, you might think it's keyboards, and a lot of the breaks in the middle of the songs, like
Mhm.
where they stop and some weird sound will come in. A lot of that is actually Belial on the guitar synth. He's got a guitar synth. Shoot, I can't remember the name of it now. But it's a synth pedal, and
Okay.
he does a lot of that on the album. And it's weird sounds. It sounds just like a kind of like a keyboard, I would say, but you probably wouldn't think it's a guitar, but it is.
I might think it's a weird comparison, but when I listened to the album, it felt like a heavy version of Pink Floyd. Because I love Pink Floyd, and they have that weird stuff, and that you have to really listen sometimes and to catch some of the stuff. You can tell you put a lot of stuff in the songs, which to me it's very interesting.
Yeah, I like effects. To me, somebody can write a really good song, of course, without all that. But
Right.
I like, when you're going for the sci-fi angle and things like that, it helps to have those effects in there and different things like that because I like it. Like you said before, I want them to be like little mini movies almost, to where when you listen to the song, you can close your eyes, you got
Yeah.
the lyrics in your head, and you're almost like visioning the whole song in your head
Right. Taking the
as you're
journey.
listening to it. And
Yep.
we use a lot of stereo effects too. So if you're listening to it in earbuds or headphones, which a lot of people do listen to stuff in earbuds now, it's unfortunately most people just listen to everything on their phone, through the phone speaker, which is about the worst way you can listen to an album. But
Right.
you can miss so much stuff. But I grew up listening to Pink Floyd too, and things like Medley and Welcome to the Machine, Animals. Those are my favorite albums by Pink Floyd. Those three out of
Right.
everything, and stuff on Medley is awesome. there's some really cool stuff on there. Careful with the axe, Eugene, things like that.
They,
Uh, yeah, what's on where I'm going to cut you into little pieces. I love that. That's a great song.
they,
So there's I always liked Welcome to the Machine a lot too. I don't know if you ever heard the remaster that they put out about 3 years ago or 4 years ago, but it is unbelievable.
oh, I'll check that out. I definitely have to check
Yes,
that
it's
out.
incredible. It sounds like you've heard it for the first time. It's so different.
Wow.
Yeah,
Is it a headphones listen?
most
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
It's amazing.
Yeah, they've always put like I said, some people are like, that's like stoner, right? Man, that shit's just good fucking music, man. It's just like,
Yeah, when you want to be in a mood and listen to something, death metal has its avenue for sure. Yeah, when
right.
you when you're in that aggressive mood and you want to listen, but if you want to just relax and lay back and listen to something, throw
Mhm,
on Welcome to the Machine, and you're put in another world when you listen to that record. The whole
mhm,
album is like one concept.
right.
So I didn't want to do that with this. That's why I picked a half an album to do the concept with, because I also wanted to have some songs on there, because like King Diamond pulled it off a few times with Abigail and things like that, having the
Yeah,
whole record be kind of a concept,
yeah.
and it can work, but I didn't want to get stuck in that either, to where every album is now got to be a whole concept,
Well,
and
actually,
then the next
I
album.
think Fatal Portrait did the same thing, kind of like you guys did. It's like songs, and there's the half the albums, like the concept, like it's kind of
Right.
a theme.
It
So
gives you a lot more, it gives you a lot more uh, diversity to be able to just do your story with a part of it, and then you still have a lot of time left to record just songs that you want to do as well.
yeah. Well, I'm, I like I said, I know you guys. The musicianship is outstanding on the album, and super impressed. But what impresses me the most is the catchy and memorable riffs in it. You guys show plenty of like talent, but you don't go overboard like so many bands do, where I'll forget the riff. Yeah, they play something that's absolutely incredible, but I'll forget it in 5 minutes, what they just played. But the stuff you guys did, it's very catchy and memorable. They got hooks to them, and um, yeah, was that a concerned thought when you were writing, like to make sure those were in there, or did it just come naturally?
Not really. Is Nothing is too thought out as far as the music, because the way we put it together, it's literally sometimes they would come up with a riff right there in the room, and by the time we learned it and put drums to it, it might have even changed two or three times, even the actual riff itself. So,
Oh, okay.
but the thing with both Damien and Belial, they're really different guitar players, and they've got really different styles, which is why I I wanted both of them in the band, because I really respect what both of them do on their own. And I thought, wow, this guy's amazing at shredding. This guy's amazing at weird stuff. So let's put these two together and see what comes out of it. And and the weird thing is, like you said, that the riffs are memorable, but when you actually see what they're playing, they're actually quite complicated, but they don't sound like they are.
I don't know. Some of the stuff sounds like it's complex, but it's structured where it sticks in your head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm getting at. It's like you'll hear the riff and it sounds simple and does stick in your head, but then when you watch them play it, there's a lot of little things going on in there.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
go, damn, I didn't know you were doing that there. Like especially when they're showing each other the riff, like Damien will come up with something and then start showing it to Belial, and Belial's like, "What are you doing there? Oh, I thought you were doing this."
yeah,
So even though they've worked together for over 10 years with me,
yeah,
um, they still are surprising each other with these riffs. It's funny being there when they're writing this stuff,
yeah.
coming up with a riff right there, and then the other one has to learn it, and I'm watching go back and forth, and He's like, "What are you doing there? That are you doing that?" It's just it's kind of funny, but
Yeah.
they constantly even surprise each other, which is cool.
Well, you got two killer guitars. I mean, and Damien, is a complete fucking shredder, and Bilal is too. It's like funny working with Bilal before. Um, he was doing Lethal Prayer years ago, and that shit years ago was fucking out of hand, and
Yeah, his
so
lethal prayer stuff. Oh my god, it's
yeah.
crazy, and he's got like 20-minute songs.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and that's been his baby for years, man. It's like that's why when he joined with you guys, I felt like, well, this will be a good fit because he's definitely into doing like the technical stuff and coming up with some really cool stuff. And when Acheron played with you guys in Tampa, uh watching him live was like amazing. It was like a perfect fit, man. It really cool.
Yeah, he loves to experiment on his guitar with weird stuff, and I love that too. And I think it really helps with what we do
Mhm.
because he's brought in a lot of weird sounds with the guitar synth and all that. So it's and then you got Damien on the other end just shredding. It
Yeah.
works out really good.
Yeah, Bilal's he's been like I say, he's been into that experimenting for many, many years, and it's definitely has paid off to see what he's doing now. And it'll be interesting when they did that lethal prayer done. I'm looking forward to hearing that too.
I know, yeah. And our keyboard player plays drums, Josh, and he's amazing drummer. He's got the blast beats and gravity blast. He can do all that stuff. He can play guitar, bass, keyboards, everything, drums, and his main instrument is actually drums.
Oh
But
wow.
but he's actually a really good keyboard player, and he likes to experiment. So he's not one of those keyboard players that's stuck in just playing keyboards and
Yeah.
not being able to throw in other things in parts.
Yes. Sounds like Steve from Deicide. Steve plays
No doubt.
fucking yeah. So as you mentioned on the first half of the album, there's some standalone songs, while the second half is kind of the continuation of the key story with the doctor. Can you tell us a little about the songs and the concepts behind them?
Yeah, sure. The Ascension Throne of Osiris is the first one, and it's about the pyramid, the Cheops pyramid.
Mhm.
Um, there's a chamber in there, and there's a story that they found this throne, like a wooden and metal throne, placed in the middle of a chamber. And when they studied what the chair was made of, it was made of meteor iron, iron from a meteor. So this chair was literally came from outer space
Oh, nice.
as it was crafted from a meteor.
Right.
So, and it was placed. If anybody knows anything about pyramids, they have air shafts to bring air into the pyramids, and those not only are the air shafts, but a lot of times certain stars will align with that air shaft and shine the light of the star into the chamber, into that room where the air shaft goes to, and it will literally light up the whole room with that star's uh, with that star's brightness.
Right.
So what it is there was the chair was placed right in the middle of the chamber, where on certain nights when that star would cross over that air shaft, it would shine a light right down on the star. So the pharaoh would sit in that throne, and literally when that light would come down like a shaft through the shaft and shine on him, he would use that to astrally project to that star.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was a pretty neat story.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make a song out of that.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, and then you got Cephalogod, which of course
Love
is your
it.
classic Tulu
Yeah.
taking over the earth. Now I think I just read somewhere that I think it's James Wan, who did what Insidious and Saws, some of
Mhm.
those. I believe he's just been commissioned to do At the Mountains of Madness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That
I
would be
think I read that
fucking
somewhere. I know Guillermo del Toro has wanted to do it for years, but couldn't find the right producers for it. And I think I read that James Wan, I believe it was him, but some big producer just signed a contract to do the Mountains of Madness, a Cthulhu movie. Finally,
They need to do more Lovecraft. I mean, I was always shocked that they didn't do some major Hollywood production for some of his stories. Did you?
it's coming closer. It's coming closer to happening.
Yeah. Have you seen that movie Underwater?
Oh yeah, yeah,
I was like, I just saw for the first time the other night. I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that ending. It was fucking actually pretty cool.
yeah. That and like the cabin in the woods. That one had a really good ending.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
far as things like that. Yeah, I mean, of course, you have like one of my one of my favorite like Lovecraft movies is stuff like well, you got the Dunwich Horror, which was awesome. So I mean, the color from space, the color beyond space.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that one.
The one
Um,
Nicolas Cage?
yeah, that was
Yeah.
actually surprisingly really good.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So Lovecraft is starting to creep more and more into the higher film industry. There's a
Mhm.
lot of really bad Lovecraft films that people have made that are just like ooh, or they just got torn to pieces and is nowhere near the original story. But there are some good
Exactly.
ones out there, and I
Yeah.
believe that one day there's going to be a phenomenal one come out with a big backing, and
Yeah.
hopefully this one will be it. Because at the Mountains of Madness, I'd hate to see that movie get that story get tore up by Hollywood and
Yeah.
stomped on. But
Nowadays.
but Cephalogod is your Cthulhu song where he wakes up and goes through a portal and comes to the earth, and there's his followers are already here kind of preparing him to come, and he's coming to take over the earth again.
Hmm.
So there's that one, and then Mesolithic is of course the next from Neolithic to Paleolithic to Mesolithic,
Right.
and that one's um, it's I wanted to keep doing it, and I may go back and do one called Prehistoric on the next album,
Oh,
just
yeah.
because that
Go
was
with
the
the
era
theme.
before. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mesolithic is where not a lot lyrically wise was that interesting in a way to write about, because it's like when people started getting together in groups and making villages and hunting and fishing and gathering things and making farms and all stuff like that.
Right.
So I wanted to keep going with the trilogy,
Yeah.
that, but like I said, Mesolithic was not that amazing of something to write about, but it was real history. So I kind of figured I'm going to do it anyway.
Right.
So, so I
Right.
wrote about the Mesolithic era. But now, if I go back and write about the prehistoric era on the next album, that could really garner in some really good lyrics with dinosaurs and stuff. Because Neolithic basically starts where they're wiped out.
Hmm.
You know, so I kind of could do a pre thing and go back to prehistoric just so they can all fit together and still keep going.
Right.
And the beginning is all the drumming. I have a bunch of hand drums at my house, and we took those in the studio. I brought about 7 or 8 drums, hand drums, all kinds of different ones, into the studio. And then we took a piece of where the leads were of the song, and I played a rhythm, like a drum rhythm to it on a hand drum and on a djembe,
Oh,
and then I had everybody in the band pick out the drum that they liked and add to it.
oh,
So
nice. I like that.
so that actually is real drumming. That's not samples or anything like that. It's
Uh,
real drumming, and it comes back in during the song too, where the leads are. It's kind of like not real loud because we didn't want it to overpower the leads. But
mm,
that, and then Belial actually, he had a string of goat toes and real goat toes, and
yes.
they make that clacking clack 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 sound like that. So he brought that into the studio as well, but he wasn't sure how to use it.
Hmm.
So after we did all the drums, I kind of went on top of that and used the goat toes as like a almost like somebody would use a tambourine,
Right.
to make that high click clack, claves, tambourine, some kind of percussive instrument that's got the higher pitch to it.
Hmm.
but it's also real goat toes. So everything was made with real wood drums with animal skin heads
Nice.
and goat toes, and that was the kind of stuff that was being invented basically in the
For that.
Mesolithic era. So
Right.
it really messed along with it. It kind of goes along with it. But
Hmm.
that's a little thing people probably don't realize is that it's a bit long. We should have probably cut it down to 1 minute instead of 2 minutes. But when you kind of get going with playing like that, it kind of goes by kind of fast. So we didn't
Right.
realize it was as long as when you sit back and listen to it, it's like, okay, this is a bit long, but it works, and
I think it does
it's
too.
a little different, things going on through the whole thing. There's little parts in it with little rolls and clacks and different things. It keeps changing, but the main beat stays the same. So we used it like a click track. We used the rhythm of the song, the actual
Mm.
song itself, as a click track, and then we put it in the beginning, and then we could bring it back in later, and it actually matches.
Oh
So
yeah.
that was kind of like done as a whim in the studio. I kind of had the idea after we were recording to do that. So we didn't plan on doing that. We just kind of winged it and did it.
Well, it worked very well. That's for sure.
Yeah, it did come out pretty good. So and then Organism 46B is it's
I
kind of like
love
the
that.
movie The Thing.
That's I was going to say that. That's the first thing I thought of when I read the lyrics. I was like, God, this feels like the Thing movie. Not a different story, but that vibe you get from it.
yeah, that's actually a story I saw on the internet. And at first, when it came out, I think it was around COVID and nobody was doing anything. And I read this story. It came out because a lot of people weren't working and nobody was going anywhere. So I was reading a lot of stuff on the internet, and come across this story about Organism 46B. And it was a Russian scientist who was a survivor of the team. Uh, they were like an experimental dive team that was in the Antarctic in a lake called the Vostok Lake, which is real.
Uh,
So and then he said how they were diving on these diving missions. They were going on these diving missions, and they came across this weird creature with a bunch of tentacles, and it was pretty big. It was like 20 feet long, and it was huge. And
right.
my dog's got a heart condition. Uh, the guy, he starts coughing real bad, and then he's off and on all the time now. Um, but anyway, so this dive team comes across this weird creature, and it ends up being kind of telepathic. They can tell, and it kills one of the members on one of the missions when they're diving down there. It grabs one of them and kills them, and then they end up capturing it, and they capture it, and then they bring it back to Russia, and all of a sudden it's gone. Like they have it in a cage, in like an aquarium kind of thing,
Yeah.
and a big aquarium thing, and then they bring it back, and then the government takes it away, and it's never seen again.
Oh
So
wow.
that was,
Nice.
yeah. And they presented the story when it came out as real, but it actually ended up being a not real story. The more I dug into it, because I was like, wow, this is interesting, and I thought it was real too, and most people do when they first read it because that's the way it was presented as
Uh,
something that was real. And then the more I dug into it to try to find out more information and why weren't there any pictures of this thing, I found out that it wasn't a real thing, but it still made a very interesting story to write about, a song about.
one of those creepy pasta
Yeah,
stories.
uh, I wouldn't doubt it. It's kind of like the underwater thing, a movie. It's kind of similar to that in a way,
Mm.
as well. So I think the creatures are kind of similar, uh, and when you read the story on the internet. So then you got the rest of the album is basically the Dr. Mage's story continued, where it picks up right where Paradox left off. And
Mm.
Mission Malkuth is sort of like an overview song of like everything that happened. It starts with what happened in the key with Andromeda Strain and destroying the Major. I kind of go through lyric wise. It kind of tells the story up until the next song, Yesod, starts.
Right. Right.
So he's basically where the Paradox left off, where he's on this interdimensional planet with these beings, and they put him in the machine and gave him these other powers and knowledge and things like that. And then they all of a sudden they tell him, but there's this mission you have to do now, and you have to go to this giant tree of life floating in the universe that's all 11 portals.
Right.
So he has to go. Well, he's already done the Earth portal basically, and that's what like his sign, the pentagram with the lightning bolt, is kind of represents the Earth.
Okay.
So like the lightning striking the Earth, that's an idea coming down. So that is basically he's already got that. So that's why Mission Malkuth starts there. And then the second song is Yesod, Dark Side of the Moon, because Yesod, which is the second sphere, or actually coming from the bottom up, if you're
Right.
ascending, it's about the moon and the virtues of that. So when he goes through that portal, he has to fight this moon creature, and there's like he goes into this big cavern on the moon, and it's in a crater on the moon, and he goes in there and he finds this creature that's looming over this big altar, and
Mm.
it's worshiping this symbol of
Right.
the pentagram with the quarter moon, and he has to kill the creature and take the symbol. So he does that, and then it goes on to the next song. Then he travels through the pathways of the tree of life to the next portal, and which is Hode, and he has to go there, and that is basically, it's like got a lot of it was where he learns like a lot of powers and magical stuff in that symbol. He has to learn these things from other beings. So he's taught basically the secrets of the universe. And they say if you learn how to pronounce the name of God, which is supposed to be unpronounceable, that you become a god.
Right.
So they basically teach him how to do that, and he pronounces the name, and then he just becomes like this even more superior being.
Right.
And he
That
leaves that. Yeah, it's kind of a complicated
it
situation.
so that explains like the cover, because when I saw the artwork, I thought the Kabbalah tree of life, it looks structured like that, so that makes sense. Um,
Yeah, it's a big one in space, and so he's going to go to each of those portals and conquer what that portal stands for. Like basically, it's him conquering himself and bringing himself up a level each time, his mind and his way of thinking, and then he also collects a sigil, which is just like the one in his chest. He collects a new one each time, and once he collects all of those, then he gets, well, it's kind of, I don't want to give too much away for the next album,
right, right,
but he gets, and I do mention it though at the end. He gets a When he gets to Doth, which is after the first 7 portals. There's a gate there that's called Doth, which is the 11th portal, but it's in the middle. So it's kind of hard to explain if you don't know a lot about the Kabbalah. But and Doth is a gateway to the backside of the tree, which is where all the demonic symbols are,
right,
and pathways. So he's working towards the conquering those 7 knowable portals, because those 7 knowable portals are all things that you can understand, like knowledge, this and that. They're all things that you can physically understand or mentally understand. The top 3, the top 3 after Doth are supposed to be unknowable because they're like supreme things, and our brain can't even comprehend them.
right.
So, but the next album will bring him to the gate of Doth. So, because he'll conquer the next 3 spheres, and
Mhm.
then that would be take him to the gate. And there's a sword, which I call the Sword of Doth, that he has to get that.
Oh, right on. But I mean, these stories can go on for a long time, man. It's cool the concept and stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
if he conquered the tree, it would take 2 more albums, the whole tree.
mhm. Well, as I mentioned with the album cover, who did your album cover? And it definitely fits the Nocturnus AD, the whole theme, even back to Nocturnus. Um, was this something you gave him to an idea, or did he just expand on it himself?
Um, I had the whole idea, of course, because of the tree. I knew where I was going with the story. So I gave him Yui Jarling is the artist, and I actually have known him for a few years. He does a lot of book covers and things like that, paintings for books and weird stuff. He's done a ton of album covers,
Mhm.
and he's got that kind of older style of Frazetta and people like that. You know, he's got
Right.
that real good fantasy and type of artwork, and he's an amazing artist. So I always wanted him to do a cover. And how I met him was back in 2018. The guy that did the apotheosis video, Mike, he knew Yui, and he said, "I know this guy. You know, I wanted to have a figure made, a 3D model of Dr. Magus."
Mhm.
And Mike didn't know how to do it. The guy that did the video for apotheosis, but he said, "I know somebody that could do this for you." And so from the covers, I and all the stuff I've done with Dr. Magus, um, I gave all that stuff to Yui, and he created a 3D model. I worked with him for months to get this thing right, and you know, and we used him in the apotheosis video.
Oh.
So I've had that. So I knew him back then in 2019, 2018, and so I thought, well, I'd already talked to Tim Bull, who did the Paradox cover, about doing a cover,
Mhm.
and so he did the Paradox cover. And then I always wanted, I think I want to try to get somebody different for each cover, but still use Dr. Magus, so you get a little different kind of spin on everything.
Right. It definitely, like, you look at all the album covers, they fit. It's, well, we won't say thresholds. I don't know, that really didn't fit, but everything else seemed to like fit pretty good. Um, yeah, this theme is awesome, and we talked earlier. I told Mike that this should be made a movie or a series, a video game. Hollywood needs to look into this motherfucker here and do a deal with him because he has some great ideas and I mean, lyrically, dude, you stepped up to the plate, man. You really brought it. It was all the stuff's interesting. You can tell you put your time into it, and it was really enjoyable. Now, going into recording in the studio, how would you compare recording with this lineup of Nocturnus AD compared to, say, the old days with Nocturnus during the key? What's is there a big difference? Is it the same? Is it the same feel, or what's the vibe compared to like today from the old days?
Well, I think the main thing was the time in which we recorded it, because both like the key thresholds and stuff before that, like the stuff we did, even in Acheron, we had a time limit, and we did an album, and you know, like the stuff me and you did in Acheron, we did literally over one weekend,
Yep.
and even the Lex Talionis, that thing, that's a whole album. We did that, I think, in a weekend, right? I believe.
We recorded, remember me and Vinny went to Austria to do the, what was it? To do the leads and the vocals. But
But yeah, but the actual music we recorded like
yeah,
in one weekend.
yeah. They were all pretty bang. I mean, I remember being in the studio for fucking what, 12, 13 fucking hours a day. That was fucking brutal. Yeah. So
Yeah, but we got it done. And that's the
yeah.
thing, you know, the same thing happened with the key and thresholds. Is we went into Morrisound and recorded the key in like a week, and I think we recorded thresholds in like 10 days. So, but it was all at one time right there. Bam, it was done. And that kind of puts a lot of pressure on you in some ways, and a lot of bands are used to it and all that. But when we did the key, everybody was still pretty fresh, and other than when I did, of course, Abominations of Desolation, and that was the same kind of situation. we got thrown into a studio that we didn't know at all in another state, and I had never recorded in a real studio before that, a
Right.
real studio. So it was like, what? Got to do this, got to do that, and I didn't get a chance to do any mixing on Abominations. After we recorded, we were sent home, and the mixing was done with Trey and David Vincent. So I didn't get a chance to even learn how to mix anything really. And back then, you didn't have your own recording studios like everybody does now, and Pro Tools or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So, when it came time for the key was done on a real mixing board, with 2-inch tape, 24 track.
Hmm.
And then by the time we did thresholds, they had just got the new mixing board, which was automated, and I believe Pro Tools was a very early version. They did have some of that, but didn't use it a lot at first. But those things were a lot different recording situations because you had to do everything in a certain amount of time. We
Right.
weren't really prepared for it, and we were more prepared for thresholds. That's why it's probably more of a congealed record. Like it's probably a more like a studio album than the
Hmm.
key is. The key's almost like a live record.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's no, there's hardly no actual real editing done on the drums on the key at all. Everything is just we recorded it and there it is.
Who
So
did you work with Tom Morris on that one?
I'm both.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's Earache wanted us to use Tom because Tom did Morbid Angel. That was basically, you know, Scott was doing all kinds of albums, and he would have been a better choice to me, just because he was more into the death metal thing. And then, but
Hmm.
I really like Jim Morris's sound that he gets a lot, like the
Hmm.
Nasty Savage record. That
Oh,
thing has
yeah.
a huge sound, you
Oh,
know.
yeah. That's a
So
great
I
album.
kind of wanted to use Jim Morris really because just they're all different. Tom's very technical and he's really good, and of course he did the Morbid Angel, which there's nothing wrong with that at all. But he's not a death metal guy.
Right.
When
Yeah.
it comes to ideas and things like that, he doesn't really throw anything in. He's pretty technical. He's just like, here you go,
Yeah.
and then when your session is over at midnight, your session is over at midnight. I've seen Scott literally stay there all night, working
Yeah.
with bands,
Yeah.
and
Working with Scott, he definitely did that. But it's back then too, there wasn't a lot of people that knew how to deal with death metal. Scott just happened to be a person to like it and actually, but Tom and Jim, they did killer stuff too. But later on, people started to understand the type of music and how to work with it. Those early
yeah,
days were all, I mean, even with the Acheron stuff we did, at Audio Lab, those guys weren't into death metal. It was just using what you had to use at the time. And
right, right.
speaking of the production, can you tell everybody? Jared did the record with you, like where you recorded this and who did the mixing and the mastering and everything.
This record, Jared did everything.
Oh,
So
okay.
last time he did all the engineering and mixing, and he had another guy master it that he was working with. But this time he's like, I think I can do the mastering now because he bought more mastering equipment, which he didn't have back then. So he had, I guess he figured, you know, that way the record didn't really leave the studio to get mastered, because that can change a lot of things. Mastering can actually change a lot
Yeah.
if it's not done right. So this time Jarrett said, "Let me do everything," and we he did such a good job with Paradox and understood what we wanted. And I've known Jarrett since the '90s, and he lived in the same apartment complex I did, and then even in the same building. So I used to see him all the time
Oh, okay.
when
Yeah.
he was in Eulogy. Uh,
Yep.
and I think at that time I wasn't even hardly doing anything. I was helping some friends of mine do bands, not even like it was in between the time when I before I started doing After Death.
Hmm.
So it was in between Acheron and After Death. There was a period of a few years where I just kind of really didn't have my own thing going on. I was there's a lot of friends of mine in Tampa that had bands that are like, hey, we need a drummer. Will you do this for us? And I'm like, sure. You know, I'm not doing anything.
Right.
So that was sort of in that time period. And then I met Jarrett. Well, actually, I met Jarrett when I was still in Acheron, I believe.
Yeah, because they practice next door. And one
Right.
thing
Yeah.
and one thing about him, I loved Eulogy, man, but fucking he was very unique with his playing, and he reminded me kind of like a Trey. You know, he came up
Yeah.
with some
Jarrett's an
very
amazing guitar
interesting
player.
stuff. Yeah, so it was when you told me he was doing your album, I was like really intrigued. And didn't you say he's like working with is it Triptychon or is it Hellhammer?
All of Tom Warrior's projects, he's doing live sound for all of them.
Oh, that fucking A,
Yeah,
man.
they did a Hellhammer set. They did a at Maryland Death Fest. They did a Celtic Frost Hellhammer. They did Triptychon.
Mm.
Uh, he's done all of it, and of course he's done a lot of stuff with 1349. He worked with Goat Whore for years,
Oh,
and
I didn't know
he
that.
yeah when he moved to Orlando, he went to the that Full Sail, I think it
Full
was,
Sail, yep, Full Sail.
and he got all kinds of degrees and really pushed himself. And he's got, I think he said there's only one of like so many people in the United States that actually have a degree in Pro Tools,
Mm.
a certified degree. So he's got that. He's done video stuff in Full Sail. So he learned a lot of stuff over those years,
Yep.
and now he can run sound for bands live. He can do engineering. He can, like you
Yeah.
said, he's an amazing guitar player.
Mm.
So he's a well-rounded person when it comes to everything to do with music, pretty much. And
Right.
he does a lot of producing for us too. Like he'll come up with, we're in the studio and he's like, well, what do you think about doing this here? And
Mm.
we didn't think about that, but he did. So
Right.
sometimes I didn't want to get a producer that's just going to walk in and go, here's my sound. Like you take a Bob Rock and here's my sound, and I'm going to put this into your band, and
Right.
and I'm going to arrange the songs the way I want to arrange them. I didn't want somebody that was that heavy-handed to produce us, but I
Mm-hmm.
did want somebody to produce us and throw in their ideas a lot, as much as they wanted, but not just take over the whole project and make us something that we're not.
Right. No, that's
And that's
important.
it.
Yeah, because even when we did the Vincent Crowley album, the two albums, we used the same guy, Joe Veers, went to the same studio. He does the same thing like you mentioned. He'll do the recording, the mixing, the mastering, and he's one of those guys that's been in metal for a long time, and he doesn't want to produce it. But if he has an opinion, hey, why don't you try this? Which several times on both albums, he came up with small little ideas that we wouldn't have thought of, and it's kind of having like an extra member that's not pushing it on you, just giving you kind of, hey, why don't you try this? And I think that's important to have somebody that can have that ability when you're recording because you can come up with some killer stuff.
He definitely did. He's like, let's try this. And then sometimes we showed him stuff and he's like, what are you doing? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are you doing there? And he's like, I don't even understand this. then,
Yeah.
then when it comes together, he's like, oh, okay. But he's a perfectionist. Jared is a perfectionist. He will sit there and go, you really want that to be on the record? You really want
Oh,
that to be on? You really like that solo?
right,
Are you happy with that? And he'll make you do something 10 times
right,
until he's happy with it. So he's kind of like that type of producer where he will literally sit there and go, redo that lead. I didn't like that one note there.
right.
And he knows what he's talking about. That's the
Mm-hmm.
thing. Sometimes when you write something and you do it yourself, you don't hear things sometimes that other people do, of course.
Right,
And he's that type of person where he'll sit there and go, I what about that part right there? Don't you think you should kind of move that up a note or do this or you know maybe we should make this guitar sound like this here. He's very uh smart with that kind of stuff, and,
yeah,
and he brings out a lot more out of you than you do yourself.
right. Well, he did a fantastic job. In fact, you see him or talk to him, tell him I said hello. I haven't seen him in years, but man, he's always a fucking cool guy, and fucking, I'm
I
glad
just
to see him doing well.
Yeah, he's got his own studio there in Orlando, which is another thing that was good for us because we can literally drive there in an hour and a half.
Mhm.
you know, and then record all day and then drive back home and sleep in our own bed that night and then come back the next morning. That's how we did a lot of the album. We do, drive there Saturday morning really early, stay
Mhm.
there till about, 10, 11 at night, and then, drive home, get up the next day and get back there at 11 a.m. again the next day, and we do that on Fridays, on Saturdays and Sundays.
Uh-huh.
And I think the whole album was recorded just on Saturdays and Sundays that
Uh,
way.
you're not pressured, man. It just goes by so much better, man. It's like I don't, and you being a vocalist too. It's I don't want to have to put a whole night into fucking screaming or fucking doing vocals and layering them, and my throat by the fourth song is already starting to feel the effects because it's so much better to do a couple songs, take a couple days off, come back, do a couple more, and it's more fucking organic and relaxing, not rushed.
Yeah. Well, I
So
think I did the vocals pretty much in one weekend. I think I came back the next weekend and did a couple little parts over.
mhm.
But most of them were done in one weekend, and that's
Oh
like I
wow.
said before. I wasn't really that prepared for it, and the worst part was because I didn't ever sing and play those songs when I went into the studio. Now I'm doing that. Now we're working on getting all this stuff live as close to the album as possible. So I'm kind of working on that now, singing and playing everything because there's a lot of lyrics to throw in there sometimes, and playing fast and trying to sing a lot of lyrics all at once. You're like,
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
getting it.
one thing I always wanted to ask you, do you find it weird when you're just singing, not playing drums? Does it
Yes,
because it feels
I
like it
don't
would
feel
be
the
a
same.
natural thing for you.
I don't. I almost feel like I should sit down and sing while I'm playing because it's my breathing is different that way. When I'm standing up, it's
Oh yeah.
completely different, and uh, I don't know. I When I sing and play, I can't think. I have to have the lyrics in my head already. I have to have them memorized.
Mm,
I can't when I'm learning them, I have to read them off a piece of paper until I get them down
right.
and try to play and sing and read at the same time, and it's like hard to do that. And
Hmm.
so I wasn't really that prepared, like I said, with the vocals on this record. I wish I had more time to work with that before we went in, but I had literally never sang those songs live before the
Mm,
studio, and I hadn't sang in months and months. So
yeah.
I should have been at least, but we were so focused on just these songs and not going back and playing old stuff that all we would do is go in there and practice the music.
Mhm.
And I should have tried to get the lyrics done quicker and earlier and then tried to work them in live, like in our practice room. That way I would have had a much better idea of how to do it. And my voice would have been not as strained because I didn't want to strain my voice, like you said. And
Yeah.
I hadn't sang in so long that I'm not as gruff as I was when I'm
Mhm.
singing all the time.
Right. Right. But it still sounds great, man. And one thing I was so glad to get the CD before I did the interview because one of the things I really liked the pictures of the band. When did the Lovecraftian morphing of the fucking
Well,
Belial is fucking great. That's just total Belial right there, man.
yeah, the
And
funny thing is, everybody hates the AI. I know, I've heard it a million times. And
mhm.
these were ran through that by me. I did that part.
Uh-huh.
But here's the thing: every album that we've done, Tim Hubbard has taken the pictures of us,
Right.
and Tim Hubbard's taken pictures of everybody. DSI, all the obituary stuff ever since the old obituary when they were hanging themselves. The Nocturnus stuff on the key and thresholds. Tim Hubbard. Tim Hubbard took all these pictures. So again, just like we did on Paradox, we went into Tim Hubbard's studio and we had pictures taken.
Mhm.
Now we also had green screen pictures taken at the same time. So that's what those are. They're real pictures of us that were taken by a real photographer, and I did the AI part to turn us into what creature we liked the most.
Mhm.
So, like Josh is the mind flayer from Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm Cthulhu and
Right.
Belial is the goat.
Yeah.
So it's like it was that kind of situation where I asked everybody, "Hey, what would you like to be turned into as far as a creature?"
Yeah.
And then we did that with it. So it didn't take I know everybody hates AI because they say it takes jobs away from artists, and that's true. It can. But again, we used the same photographer. He was paid the same amount of money that the paradox pictures were, the key pictures were. I mean, he's a real photographer. He took in a real studio.
Mhm.
They're the same pictures that we would have put in there, but just I put some weird stuff on, filtered them through AI to make us into weird creatures.
Right.
Don't see the harm in that, you know.
I mean,
I know.
if anybody can get away with it, it would be you guys. I mean, you're talking about fucking technology and the future and shit like that. I mean, that is part of the fucking future. I mean, I understand people, you know, at first I was totally against AI completely. Um, I think, it's more for like album covers, you know what I'm saying? Especially if you have a budget to have an album cover done. But every little thing you do, I mean, if you don't have the fucking money or if you have an idea that you can do yourself for some project, and like you said, you hired a photographer and it's not like you didn't give a job to somebody. Uh, I can see it being used in some cases that where it works. So it's like one of those things. It's yeah. Would we all like to have a fucking artist do our shit and fucking boom, we give jobs and shit? Sure we would, but like you said, you kind of used your idea and came up with what you did, and I mean, I think it fits. I don't have a fucking problem with it. You know, if I see Kerry King with his fucking cover that I know he's getting big money, there's no reason for him to have an AI cover. You know what I'm saying? It's a whole different angle on these things. But
I
but
mean,
no,
we started with real photos that were taken by a real photographer that took all the other photos on all the other albums. So, so we didn't do anything different except for I ran it like a filter, like
yeah,
a Photoshop filter, no different. And bands have been doing stuff like that. If you tell me half these people's pictures aren't touched up in Photoshop,
mhm,
that's just stupid to not believe that.
yeah, no, I
If you
agree.
if you've ever touched up a photo in Photoshop, then you've used the same thing I did here. You
Yeah,
know, it's no different than that.
no, but I think the photos really fit. It was a pleasant surprise actually. I was like going, wow, I wasn't expecting fucking all this shit, man. It's fucking cool, man. And speaking of that, let's get to your videos. Um, you have 3 videos out now. Uh, all of them are very interesting. Uh, I watched the newest one. Wow, that was fucking amazing. You want to tell us about each video and how they became a reality?
Yeah. Well, with the pop, I mean, Apotheos. With Cephalogod, I knew a guy that I'd seen his work. He did stuff for Meshuggah, and he did some of their videos. And he has a certain style. His name's Wizard Head, and he does use the AI as a filter as well. So we had a friend of mine, Tom, um, come in, and I used to work with him on Metal Masters. So he came in and filmed us, and then we took the footage of us playing to the song, and sent it to Wizard Head, and he did his little magic stuff to the footage. So it's the same as what you would see any band doing, as far as in a room, and you see a million videos of somebody in a warehouse type room playing with the lights on. Everybody's done that kind of video, just about.
Right.
So it's the same thing. I just wanted to have something different with that.
Mm-hmm.
So we did the same thing everybody else did. We had a real person film us, and then instead of using the footage raw, we just had somebody filter it. So that one, and I wanted to have a Cthulhu vibe. of course, to
Yeah.
the cephalogod. So I knew he could make us into these tentacled creatures playing our instruments and make it just something really otherworldly. And that's what
Right.
it needed. It needed that.
Right.
So I think the way we used it, I think it really worked, and it didn't take a job away from anybody. In fact, it gave two people jobs, whereas most bands they get one person to come in, film, and edit it, and it's out. We
Mhm.
actually paid two people, so we actually created another job to make this video. We had two
Right.
people work on it instead of just one director producer guy, you know.
Mhm.
So that as far as people saying that AI takes jobs away, well, actually, we found a way to give somebody a job and give two people jobs to do the video.
And it worked.
Now,
I mean, it really worked out well. I mean, I enjoyed the video. I thought it looked great, and it, one thing with some of the AI stuff, it looks cheesy at times, and that one didn't look cheesy. He did a fucking phenomenal job. Whatever he did,
oh,
to.
yeah, Wizard Head, he's been doing it for a long time, and he's got a certain style of doing things. So I knew what it would look like, when I explained it to him, and he's done a lot of crazy. He takes old like Teletubby shows and changes them into really crazy creatures
Right.
and warps the he likes messing with old commercials and stuff and does those, and he takes the sound of the commercial and warps it, and he does some crazy stuff. If you go to his YouTube page, you'll see a lot of really weird videos on there that he's done. But I mean, he did the Meshuggah video and nobody said anything about
Right.
anything bad, and we did the same thing. He's done a lot of videos, so it's his style, and I wanted that um, a little bit more tentacled than usually it's more horrific kind of stuff he does. But I wanted it a little bit more tentacled and Cthulhu looking, and he's really into that stuff too. So he was happy to do it,
Right.
and so that's how we did Cephalogod. And well, Yesod was just what happened there was uh, the guy we were going to have the guy who did Apotheosis do Yesod, and he had some health problems and couldn't really work on it for us. So the record company had Profound Lore had a date set for a video to be released, and we were definitely not going to make that date with a
Right.
video. I could not find the right person at the time, and so they just said, "Well, let's just we want to release another song, so let's just do a visualizer video like a million other bands." I was kind of against it, but um, I guess it was okay, where you just take the album cover and put it in After Effects and it moves. And
Right.
thousands of bands have done that,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
very common thing. And of course, we got a lot of flack for that. Oh, this is cheap, and But when other bands do it, I don't see anybody commenting that it was cheap. It was just more of a fact that we had a date set to release a song, pre-release a song from the album, and we couldn't get a real video accomplished in that time.
Yeah.
So we went ahead and just did a visualizer video like thousands of other bands have done.
Mhm.
And it was no different than what that is, but people again,
People always
okay.
bitching.
Yeah. So then with Hode, we had a little bit more time and I found the right guy to do the animation. And I wanted to have another Dr. Mages video for sure
Mhm.
because of the concept of the key. So I I I I had kind of had a trouble picking out which of the four songs to do because I kind of wanted to do Yesod as a video because of the it could have made a really cool video as far as him fighting the moon creature and killing it and all that. It would have made a really cool video. But since we used it for the visualizer, I was like, shoot, now I only have like three other songs to choose from to do the video. And
Right.
I think there's so many since Mission Malkut tells a story of like the whole history. That would have taken a long time to put a video together of all these different clips of so many different things.
Yeah.
So Hode was really the best choice, but it was such a weird mind expansion type song with
Mhm.
the lyric wise. I was like, how am I going to make this stuff happen on film? On
Yeah.
so we kind of had to go. If I would have done Hode in like realistic looking with people and actors and all that, it would have cost $1 million.
Oh, sure. But
He's
it was very. I mean, bringing the guy in, strapping him in, making him fucking watch this stuff, and then going into this journey. It was a good watch. I was definitely impressed. The guy did a phenomenal job on it, and it. The other thing I could think of is, man, you should fucking do it to all the songs that are linked to that story, something like that, because that would be fucking amazing.
I know it would be not. I'd like to go all the way back to the key and each of those four songs on each of those three records, make
Mhm.
a whole long whole thing out of it. It would be like a movie,
Right,
and some people don't like that type of animation, the video game type of animation. But when you're going with such extreme types of things in the lyrics, it almost has to be done because building sets for every bit of those songs, like Andromeda Strain, Destroying the Manger, building sets, droid sector, spaceships flying in and destroying things, and then you got Destroying the Manger, going back in a time machine to build all those sets and make that into a real video would be impossible without millions and millions of dollars. So animation is the best way to go with that.
right,
You can literally do almost anything with animation nowadays.
right.
So and CGI is in every movie you see now, just about,
Oh, for
especially
sure.
anything to do with sci-fi, any kind of Star Wars. If you like
It's
Star Wars and any of that stuff, then you gotta like CGI because that's all those. Even most action movies these days, like car chases and stuff now, are not even real anymore.
yeah,
It's
everything's
everything's done
green
in front of a
screen.
green screen now. Yeah,
Yep.
everything. And they just all the backgrounds are computer generated.
Yeah.
Um, and AI has taken that over now to where you're going to see some really incredible stuff that looks so real you won't even realize that you're watching AI.
Hmm.
And they're even starting to use it in video games now for the backgrounds because it's because of the way it generates things. It uses a lot less computer power and a lot they and it can also change things each time, like when you play a video game, the background's always the same each time you play the game. You know what to do because you can go a little farther as long as you memorize everything. So when they start bringing AI into video games, you're never going to be able to play the same game twice, which is kind of cool in a way. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it, it's people are going to have to prepare for it. It's just like when Pro Tools came out. Okay, bye bye 24 track recording with reel to reel.
That's like with Hollywood, they're doing contracts with their actors where they can make movies without them,
Right.
if
Yeah.
they, and, you know, we've seen that in Star Wars, Peter Cushing, he was long gone. Carrie Fisher, it's like they're putting characters into that. And that was a little bit ago. You could just imagine where technology has advanced even since then. And I've seen actual videos people put of like, which is scary, of making videos of other people talking, making them sound like them. It's not even them. And it's
Yeah,
like, it's bizarre and it's kind of fucked up in that as realistic as it is nowadays.
for sure. I mean, with everything, just like the internet, it brought a lot of good things and it brought a lot of bad things.
Yeah, for
So
sure. For
this
sure.
is what's going to happen with AI. It can bring a lot of good things. Like they've even wrote programs now uh, feeding in stocks, and AI has perfected programs of telling people what stocks to buy by the information they fed into them. And now people
Wow.
are making a fortune off of these programs that they'll put 10 stock companies in there or 100 even, and it'll tell them when and how much and everything to invest, and it will work.
Well, that just changed my attitude about AI. About to
I mean,
invest.
seriously, that's true.
No
It's
doubt.
really true. I mean, pretty soon it'll be doing. They said that they fed in a lot of information about a certain type of cancer, and it came up with a cure.
Wow.
So again, just like when the internet came out, it was a good thing and a bad thing.
Hmm.
So it can be used either way.
Well, well, with today, people always ask me like, what bands do you listen to? Um, I try to listen to new stuff, but there's so much an overabundant source of it. It's hard to kind of grasp bands. Every once in a while, I get one and I go, okay, I really like this song. I'm going to take a chance on the album. And usually it's pretty good and it works. But I still go back to the old catalogs and listen to a lot of the older stuff too. What are you listening to nowadays? Is there any newer bands you like, or do you still kind of listen to the ones you grew up on?
Still, I'm still pulling out the old stuff when I listen to this stuff. And believe it or not, since I do metal for not for a living, but all the time, and I listen to my stuff trying to get it, especially trying to get this album out and getting familiar with the new songs, things like that. I've been listening to so much stuff that I try to get away from metal when I listen to music now, and I go back and I try to. What I like to do is try to find bootleg live shows of some of these older bands that I like, and like say Zeppelin. You could take a Led Zeppelin, find there is so many bootleg Led Zeppelin shows out there now. It's insane. There's hundreds and hundreds of them,
Oh,
and this band would play sometimes 3 hours straight,
that's crazy.
and they'd play these songs that are on their albums that sound nothing like the version on the album. In
Uh-huh.
fact, say they played 2 nights in a row at Madison Square Gardens, they would play that same song differently each night they played. And I don't know how they did it and got away with not totally fucking up on stage completely,
Right.
but damn, they pulled it off. When you see a band that can take their 5 minute song and turn it into a 10-minute jam and make it even more interesting, and then the next night do the same thing and make it an 8 minute jam, then the next night do the same thing and make it a 12 minute jam. How do you do that? I'm like, that to me is amazing.
Yeah.
And you hear little things that they never did before on each show. And it's like, when did you take, how did you do this? How do you know when to come out of a piece that you just made up right there on
Right.
stage in front of 20,000 people? How do you do
Yeah.
that? So I've been kind of going back. A lot of times I like going to these older bands from the 70s
Mm.
and pulling up their bootleg live shows on YouTube and listening to that kind of stuff. I really like even Pink Floyd, to take an example. Some of their live stuff that it's different from the album. And
Yeah. It,
like the Pompeii show. Look at that. That was incredible. So to me, I kind of like going back and listening, and it's a lot of it's stuff I've never heard before.
mm,
Go back and find an old Rainbow or Deep Purple show from the 70s or 80s and watch that with Dio singing.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, holy shit, that's amazing.
Oh, for sure. That was a different style. It's I every once in a while I put on like Spotify if I'm at work or something and I try to see what's coming out. But a lot of times it just, you know, comes out like a blur. Like a lot of stuff sounds the same or it's not bad. It sounds good, but it's nothing to make me really drag me in. But I'm kind of like you too. I like to listen to a lot of the older stuff now. I even like, all the way back to the 90s death metal or just heavy metal and like old rock stuff like Pentagram or stuff like that. And um I guess get to a point where I also don't want to be. I saw Glenn Benton did an interview and he said, he tries not to listen to a lot of stuff too because he doesn't want to be influenced by like the new stuff. He wants to kind of keep it focused to where they were at. And I can kind of understand that, if you're always bouncing every era to be into that stuff, you're going to change with the flow. It's just the way things are. And
Yeah.
um, playing music, as you said, I'm the same way. There's times where I just want to fucking listen to something completely fucking different, or on a rare occasion, silence. It seems like music's just always bombarded, and it's great when it is there, but it does get to a point where you need to kind of get yourself back together and stuff. And
Yeah.
luckily I've found some pretty good bands that I like recently, but a lot of them too have an older style. Like that metalcore and all that stuff. That's just not my
Yeah, it's
cup of
not for me.
tea and stuff. You know,
Me
it's
either. I mean, I do listen to new stuff. Don't get me wrong, because a lot of times, somebody in the band will be like, "Hey, check this out." Like Josh, especially, he's the youngest guy in the band, so he does listen to a lot of new stuff. And if he
yeah.
finds something that's really cool, he'll send it my way. Like, show me a text here. Check this out. What do you think of this? But then, he also likes a lot of old stuff like Goblin and stuff like that too. And
Oh,
there's a
nice.
lot of Italian bands from the '70s that were like Goblin that
Mhm.
never you would have never heard if you don't go on YouTube and investigate these things or have somebody show them to you.
Yeah,
So yeah, I mean, just it's weird. You can find so much old stuff that came out that
yeah.
like that band Jacula, Jacula.
I haven't heard
Have you
them.
ever heard that?
No.
Oh my god, it's totally satanic music from the '70s, and it's the guy plays a pipe organ, but he
Oh,
also plays guitar like Ingve, and
wow.
it's incredible.
I'll
And
definitely have to. How you
he
spell
has
that?
I can't remember the name of it now. After Jacula split up, they did another. Jacula, I think, means blood in Italian. I believe it does. But he did another band after that. I can't remember what the heck the name of it was. It's a little bit, and it was pretty crazy too. But you would flip on the Jacula stuff. It's like Black Sabbath heavy,
Uh,
um, but with a pipe organ too, and the guitars like way heavier than anything I've heard from those times from the early '70s. Now he's got a couple albums that are a little bit weirder with some stuff in them in the mid '70s, but
uh,
the guy was a supposedly I don't know too much about him, but he lived in a castle and he was like this vampire kind of looking guy and but this is in the '70s, and he
right.
was totally satanic. He was,
What
and their music is totally satanic.
what's the
And
album that you recommend? Sorry, do you
in
remember?
Target, something it's most of it's in Italian. Sempre Italian. Just look up Jacula, Jacula, and
It's,
any of their earlier stuff. The first two albums are incredible.
oh, okay. I definitely will check that. I'll check that out fucking later today for sure.
Oh yeah, you won't be disappointed in that.
Nice.
But stuff like that, you would have never known it was out.
Hmm.
And I find stuff like that all the time. I look for old stuff really like that you know Emerson, Lake and Palmer type stuff that came out back then. There's
Yeah.
a lot of Italian stuff that came out that's got horror movie type soundtrack stuff like Goblin does.
Mhm.
So to
That-
me, there's so much stuff I haven't listened to yet that's really old that I still want to listen to that because it gives me ideas too to put into the new stuff. I mean,
right.
don't get me wrong. Definitely listen to new music when somebody say, especially when they bring it to my attention, say, "Hey, check this band out."
Mhm.
I'm like, "Oh, killer," and but like you said, some of it is so damn complicated. It wears me out just trying to listen to a song or two because there's so much going on, and the drums are so fast, and it's like, wow, I don't know how these people do this, and I'm
Yeah.
not, you know, but
That,
it's not it's I don't mind listening to it for sure because it's
mhm.
so good
Yeah.
musician wise. It's like what? How do you even play like that? Uh,
Yeah.
but
I some of these bands I just see like shows that they do these fucking karate kicks, and if you guys seen any of those, I was like, why, man? It almost seems like it veered off into something else. Like
yeah, the
you
metalcore is made fun. It's like almost they're making fun of metal almost.
yeah,
It's not good.
yeah, exactly. Okay, well, so what is the plan for Nocturnus AD in 2024? Do you have any like shows lined up or tours?
Well, right now we've just, since the album finally is out now, and that was like our biggest goal.
Mhm.
Now we can kind of focus on, because we're not a touring band, and but we do shows for sure and try to get on festivals as much as we can. So we've got a couple people already contacting us now
Oh, great.
for South America, for Canada, possibly Europe again. So it's most of it's not going to probably happen till 2025 as far as the shows.
Yeah.
But I'm sure we'll do a few things in 2024 later on once we get, and we actually ourselves we came up with a set list because now that we never toured for Paradox because of COVID. And
Hmm.
then after that, we just concentrated on writing another album. Even when bands started playing again live, we really didn't worry about that too much because we started writing and we wanted to really do a good album to follow up Paradox. So we kind of didn't worry about playing live at all for a long time. And so now we've got stuff we need to do on the key, of course, just like, because it fits with everything. And
Right.
now we got all of Paradox and all of Unicursal, which is an hour long itself. So we've kind of come up with some different set lists on what we would be able to play depending on how long we have. We only have a 45-minute set, and
Right.
our songs, some of them are, 7 to 10 minutes long. So you're talking literally 8 or 9 songs is all we're going to get in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And when you say that and you got 3 albums to choose from,
Yeah.
you, you got 3 songs from this album, 3 songs from this album, and 3 songs from this album. And sometimes that's already over 45 minutes.
And you're always going to have somebody pissed off because you didn't play that song from this album. That's just the way it fucking goes.
Yeah, so we're trying to, we've come up with a couple set lists now that are about 45 minutes that have a pretty good um, you know, range of stuff. We tried to grab some of the older songs that were short so we
Yep.
could throw them in and more instead of doing 2 of the longer ones, do 3 of the shorter ones, things like that. And, stuff off of Paradox that people really liked a lot. And then of course we're throwing some Unicursal in because it's new, but it's like, what do we do here? So we have a couple alternate sets where you can either play this song or this song seventh or this song fifth, things like that.
Right.
So
Awesome.
yeah, we're gonna do some shows for sure. We've already been in contact with a couple promoters and working some things out. So we'll probably be announcing some new shows pretty soon. And then of course we're gonna start working on the next album.
Yeah. I learned the hard way because like when Asheron was around, I'd always get like emails like wanting to book us, and it never was like a big deal to book something. And now I realize since those days, everything's almost like a year ahead. So
That's right.
yeah, because we're supposed to do something in Brazil in I think April, and that's next year, and then we got a European promoter trying to book us on Fest, but it's like, God damn, we gotta fucking wait a year just to do something out of the country. But that's just the way it is now. And we're gonna try to
Yeah.
do some shows too, like you guys, like, to do some kind of playing live, for 2024. But it's hard. Like all this stuff's already booked. I fucking hate it. It's like,
Yeah, and it's so expensive now. When you start talking about doing just a couple shows, the promoter has to get you over there and back 5 people,
yep,
and that's a cost. The airline flights have gone way up again,
yeah,
and so you're talking, over $5,000 just in flights.
yep. We're in your same boat too, since I'm just singing now. So we have 5 people we got to deal with. So I know it's going to
Yeah.
be
And
more
that's without taking a sound man or anybody to help you at all. That's just the band.
right.
So yeah,
Exactly.
if you don't tour it, constantly tour, it's a whole different ball game to try to get things like that. That's why for us, the festivals have been the best thing because they do have a little bit of extra money to spend,
Mhm.
on a band where they can bring you there and they're bringing other bands there, so they probably have discounts on flights
Mhm.
and things like that, as compared to where a smaller promoters bring you over for a small show.
Yeah.
He's going to need money right there. You're
Oh,
probably, to pay you and bring you over there and do all that stuff. When
yeah.
we don't ask for a lot to play a show, it's more important that we play the show than make a bunch of money off of it.
Right.
So You know how that is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's doing the shows are the most important things. And, you know, I enjoy, especially the festivals. I'm like with you. If it's not a festival or like a small run with like a bigger band, it it doesn't seem like kind of worth it. You know, it's like I don't give a shit about headlining myself. It's like, you know, I'd rather open up for a bigger band and play for some people that may not have heard the band and do that kind of thing.
Right. I totally
So
agree with that. You know, I think that's been fine with us too. We're not really a headlining band, you
mhm.
know, but I don't mind being, you know, somewhere in the middle.
I, exactly. Well, do you have time to do a few viewer questions?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, the first one is from Jim. He's asked, what led you guys to rework and re-record old Nocturnus songs on Acheron's Lex Talionis album when Mike joined the band? That's kind of a no-brainer.
That's more for you.
Well, I mean, when we got back together, you know, Rights of the Black Mass, were you, did we get to play before that release? Was it released already?
I don't remember, to tell you the truth. I think it might have been out already.
Okay, because it was like soon after, because I remember Pete was still in the band, Pete Slate.
Yeah, when we did that first show. Yeah.
And um yeah, it was just having, I look back and I go, we kind of went backwards a little bit because we wrote those songs and did those songs like several years before. So it wasn't like we were doing new material. But I think there were songs that we were familiar with and we just wanted to put them out. I mean, one thing about that album, and there's a lot of people that love that fucking album a lot, and some of them, you know, favorite album. Um, One thing I hate is the lyrics because it's like a lot of those lyrics I wrote when I was fucking an entity. You know, I was fucking some in high school. So you look at it and you're like, you know, but it brought back that feeling I think from back in the day when we were jamming in Nocturnus, and it felt right. And I love listening to the album. Um, I just wish that we could have done an album, a fresh album together, you know, than kind of rehashing the stuff. But that's, do you agree that's why we did it? Just kind of like, since
Yeah.
we were
I mean,
from,
Satanic Victory was kind of like fresh stuff.
oh, that's right. That's right. We had some new stuff on that one.
That's probably my favorite thing that we did together. I really like that recording for some reason. It's got a really good sound.
Yeah.
Everything's good on that. Um, yeah, I think it was the familiarity with the songs because I mean we had a list of at one point like 30 songs we could play.
Yeah. We got tons of fucking songs, man. It,
So you know it was the same thing like what I'm saying about what do we do now live.
mm-hmm.
It's like, but I think doing old songs, you know, not for the whole set, of course, but you know, throwing them in there really surprises people, and they want to, you know, they want to see that being done live because they've heard that song for years.
Right.
And then, you know, when me and you got back together, it was like, well, let's pull out some of these old ones for familiarity
Yeah.
first, and then they just sounded really good again, and it's
Yeah.
like, well, let's throw that in the set. So I
Yeah.
think that's really how it came about happening.
Yeah. It just felt right. And that's why we did it. Next one is from Victor. Well, kind of goes back. How was it recording those Acheron albums together back in the day? We talked a little bit about that earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, those yeah, it was fun. And remember, we literally recorded which one was it for two couches?
It had to be the EP.
Yeah, I think it was the EP. Remember what was his name? The guy that did the financing for that. Remember the little label he was had? Him and his wife, they had that house. and what's his
Oh,
name? Ron? No, what's his name? I can't remember the guy's name. Remember, he was he sold two couches or something like that for the money to record us.
what that was, because Lethal Records end up doing that album.
Wasn't that I I thought it was a guy that well, was it the other one then?
Yeah, because Lethal did that one too. Because remember,
Oh, I know what it was. I Never mind. That was something else I did at Audio Lab. I forgot about that.
I was like, wait a minute, they it was
I remember I've only recorded at Audio Lab a couple of times, and I knew it was something that we did at Audio Lab, and I remember having that same drum set that I had, and I
yeah.
was like, that was a different project. Sorry about that. That's
I
my fault on that one, but
mean, I
there was a
I remember some weird shit back in the day. That wouldn't have surprised me if fucking, but yeah, the because original member Candlelight Music was supposed to release that,
that's right. Yeah.
and that one guy submitted that artwork that we didn't like. What was his name? Scott. I think his name was Scott. We end up using it for the inside. It looked like a comic book or something. Do you remember that? Your friend?
Not I
He,
don't remember. I'm not sure on that. Like I
he was,
said, some
yeah,
of
he
that
was,
era was a little foggy.
yeah. It was an artist you knew. I think he said he drew the Morbid Angel logo or something, or
Oh
redrew
yeah,
it.
yeah. Okay. I don't remember him doing anything for us, but we did use it.
Well, we used part of it, but it looked like pretty much generic shit. And I contacted Candlelight and told him we had a problem, and wanted to use the guy who did the Rights of the Black Mass CD. And I always remember, talk about being young and just pissed off. I heard the guy get off the phone and go, "Man, it's that fucking cunt from Acheron bitching about something." And man, I was just like, "Go shove your fucking deal up your ass," and like totally fucking was pissed off because the guy I was talking to was like making a big deal. I'm like, man, all we need is a few $100 to get a good cover, and that deal went through or fell through, and then Lethal took over, and that's how that deal became. But
Okay.
yeah, but the recording, like Mike said before, it was a long weekend. That's what they were. We
Yeah. So I mean that stuff happened so fast with us, both of the recordings, and I like I said, I did a couple other projects at Audio Lab too after that,
uh
and they all kind of just like everything was like happened so fast in those couple of years right there. It was kind of
yeah,
like a whirlwind of everything that was going on.
yeah, it but both albums, well, the Satanic Victory, I know we did everything in one weekend for a fact.
Yeah.
And Lex Talionis, we recorded the majority on the weekend at Audio Lab. And then myself and Vincent Breeding, we end up flying to Austria to do the vocals and the lead guitar because the label had some kind of a deal with the guy who owned the label, and he wanted to mix and master, and which, I mean, personally, I thought we could have done a better job at Audio Lab. I wasn't all that impressed, but yeah, that's we banged those fuckers out pretty fast. That's the way we did it
Yeah.
back then.
Yep.
So okay, next one is from Steven. Yes. How do you guys keep creating great music after all these years? Do you ever get burned out?
I don't know. I don't really get burned out on making new stuff.
Yeah, I
It's taken longer than usual, just because of the fact that we don't get together but once a week. And if we miss a week, then that's 2 weeks we haven't done anything, together. So it's kind of hard because like you said before in the old interview, we used to practice 5 days a week sometimes,
Oh yeah,
and now we're lucky to get together 3 times a month.
yeah, yeah.
So
It's
it makes a
and we
big difference when you're
and we
not practicing together that much, and you got to do the same amount of stuff in like a quarter of the amount of time.
yeah. When you're younger too, I remember those times we practiced, 5, sometimes 6 days a fucking week, and we practiced not for like a set. We practiced for hours and fucking go over shit, and I think that's how we could bang it out in the studio when we needed to because we were tight as fuck at that time.
Yeah,
Um,
it makes a big difference.
but as being burned out, I'm like Mike, not doing it all the time keeps you not burned out of it. And to tell you the truth, I don't think I could be one of those bands that fucking tour all the time and then record and tour. And I got to have some kind of balance and other stuff in my life, to not be so burned out on the stuff.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. I mean,
So,
I don't like having a regular job, of course, but
right.
who does? But it's like eh, I don't know. I kind of need that a change of stuff to where I'm doing this and then doing that and then doing this thing, and I'd like to get back more. And I haven't been doing a lot of my rendering stuff, crazy stuff, and I want to get more into Unreal. Like Peter, this guy that's done the Hode video for us, he did that whole video in Unreal Engine.
Mhm.
So I know what's possible to do in that now.
Right.
And so the parts of Apotheosis with Dr. Magus was all done in Unreal Engine. So I know a lot can be done in that. I've seen people make really good like mini movies in there, and they look realistic.
Right.
So I want to learn more of that, but that takes a lot of time. That kind of stuff is not easy, and you got to really know what you're doing.
Right. Next one is from Marty. This is actually more you. I saw an Asheron video where Mike has a 3 bass drum kit. Does he still have it?
Actually, ended up that's the old Sabotage drum set
Yep.
from it was the second one that Steve had. It's in the I think it's in the Handful of Rain video, and it's in a couple other videos. I believe it's in the Streets video, maybe. Um,
Right.
but he had a couple drum sets made from a company called Falicon, and well, the riser was, and the cage, and the drums were actually made by Ludwig, and they were actually handmade for him.
Oh,
So the drums, they were huge. They were whatever they were across, like the kicks were 24 by 24. Each tom was 10 by 10, 11 by 12 by
yeah.
12, 14 by 14. So it was a really big drum set, and I bought it from Steve. Well, another guy had bought it from Steve and had gotten a DUI, so he had to pawn the kit, and he was to pay a lawyer, and he was
Uh,
about to lose it. And so he called me up. He goes, "I'm about to lose this kit, and I just don't have the money to get it out of pawn." He goes, "Give me this much, and then go get it out of pawn with the rest." And like I'll pay me this much for the kit, but give me this much and take the rest of it and get it out of pawn.
mhm.
So I went and he gave me the pawn thing, so I bought it out from the pawn shop, but
Yeah.
under his name. Before it went to sale, I got it out of pawn for him basically, but he sold it to me that way.
Yeah.
So I got it because Steve, Dr. Killdrums, Steve,
Yeah.
he sold it to this guy named Ozzy, uh, who played in Dr. Butcher with 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 him.
John Oliva.
Yeah, and so he was their drummer, and he had bought the kit from Steve. Like I said, then he ran into some problems and had to pawn it, and I got it back out of the pawn, and so I ended up with it, and I kept it for several years, and it was just too much to lug around. I mean, that bass part, there was like
Oh,
a metal grating bass that weighed like 400 pounds, and It was ridiculous. You know, it was like if you're on tour, I mean, they used that kit when they were on tour with Dio and Megadeth. So yeah, they had a forklift machine that would pick it up and literally set it on the stage. They had a rider truck that they would just pick the whole thing up and put it in the truck. It had wheels, everything. It
Yeah.
was meant for a big stage, and it was really heavy. So after a while, I couldn't. I had to cut the kit down. I had a welder guy work on it and cut it to where it was just two kicks and took the middle part out. You could still put it together with three kicks,
Mhm.
but I had to make it a piece to it to where you could make it smaller if you wanted. So that helped a little bit, but it was still just so much to
Yeah.
carry around, and everything was so heavy, and I didn't have cases for any of it. And so I ended up I had it, and Curtis from Nasty Savage was like, "You still got that drum set?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's just sitting in my house in storage, basically in the back room." And he's like, "You want to sell it?" And I'm like, "Well, you know what? Why not?
Uh,
I wasn't using it anymore.
yeah.
I liked the smaller drum sound anyway. The I like the little small rototom type stuff
Mhm.
like I use now, 6, 8, and 10 inch.
Yeah.
And it didn't. Those drums were so big; they just had a big monster sabotage drum sound,
Right.
and that was great for Acheron because I didn't need
Yeah.
to do a lot of complicated little rolls and stuff like that in Acheron. It was great for Nocturnus, but it didn't work very well for heavier music.
Yeah.
When you're doing lower, heavier, heavy stuff, you want those pounding drums,
And
and
that
so that
and that
kit worked really well for Acheron. It sounded fantastic.
and then aesthetically, of course, I mean, I remember you had the sixes on each drum,
Yep.
bass drum, and
Yeah,
then
he didn't. Steve
yeah.
didn't do that, but I did.
And then I remember you had the lightning bolt gong holder, and we used to put the pentagram with the eye in the middle that hung there on a chain behind you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember that. Yep.
So that was definitely part of the stage show for sure. It took up a lot of cool stuff on it for visual.
We had the when we were going at one point we had the stage show.
Yep. Let's see. This next one. Okay, it's Mayhemic for Satan. Sounds good. Uh Nocturnus and the Vincent Crowley band should do a tour together. It would be perfect package of sci-fi and horror metal. Would you guys ever consider it? Uh,
But if we toured, I would, for
yeah.
sure. I mean, if I toured, it would be a great package. And we've done shows together and actually
Yeah.
jumped up and played with each other
Yep.
on during the sets, both ways.
Yeah.
So I think we could do that even as well on a
Yeah.
tour, which
Yeah,
would
for
be
sure.
really well. Unfortunately, we don't tour because of our jobs and stuff, and I don't know what your band's situation is on that.
I'm the same way. I have a job that, it's not to mention, as I said, I'm not really interested in doing long tours. I agree with Mike. I think it would be a great fucking package. I mean, fuck, if you're a promoter, you want to bring us both over to play somewhere. Hey, I think that'd
Yeah,
be a fucking great thing. And yeah, last time I was in Tampa, Acheron and Nocturnus AD played, and we both got up and did songs with each other, and it was very cool. And
yep,
hell, it's I'd definitely be into it. I that's one thing I say nowadays. It's to me, it's hard to find bands that kind of fit our bill because we're not doing the extreme shit and you know the totally fucking satanic stuff. I think you know we're not doing that. I'm not doing that anymore, for this band. And I don't think it really fits a lot of times. So finding a band that's kind of unique and no, I think Nocturnus AD would be great to play with. Fucking hopefully we do that sometime soon.
yeah. It has happened before, so it could happen again.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, here's one for you from No Witty Name Devised. Uh Mike, what do you think of the Morbid Angel Abominations of Desolation's cover on Earache compared to the great bootleg cover of the woman being ravaged by demons?
Is that even a question? Seriously. I don't. I had no control over that whole earache thing, of course, and that was all between David Vincent and earache, pretty much. Not. I don't even know how much control, if any, Trey had over it. Uh, Believe it or not, I know that he sold those recordings to earache for a certain amount of money, and it was pretty much told that you can't put a good cover, you can't tell anybody what who's in the band, you can't give any information out. We're just putting this out to stop the bootlegs. And so that's all that happened with that. I think the cover is horrible.
Yeah,
And they definitely, but they didn't want it to be good. They wanted it to look like crap. They wanted it to have no information on it. They didn't want anybody to know who was playing on it. And that was all done on purpose.
right. That the artwork they used for the bootleg, I can't remember. Was that shirt that was used for a shirt, wasn't it?
I, the weird thing is, I think Trey had just gotten that from somebody when I was still in the band, and we were talking about using that for something, but it wasn't for an album cover when I was in the band. It wasn't discussed.
Oh, okay.
I know he knew this one girl that had done this really weird painting for him, and it was very I want to say almost dolly looking weird in that
Uh,
sense, like this river, and it was really Lovecrafty with all these creatures with one eyes and weird things coming out. It was like a whole landscape, and it was
uh,
really spooky looking, and it was a real painting she did, and he really liked that a lot. And we were talking about using that, which was really cool. I don't know whatever happened to it, but that was one thing we were discussing when I was still in the band, is what we were going to put on the Abominations album cover. And he did have that one painting, but I don't know whatever happened because, of course, everything fell apart, so it didn't work. So, but I think that the picture with the demons raping the girl on the altar thing, I think that he did have that near the end there, and I
uh,
think we were going to do something with that. So I'm not sure exactly the point that happened,
right.
and I don't know who. Still not sure the Satanic Records, when they put that out as a bootleg back then. I don't know where. I know it wasn't really a Japanese label. I've heard that, of course,
Right.
that did it. And I don't know how they had got that picture because I didn't even have a picture of that picture. So I'm
Okay.
not sure how all that came about and how that came out the way it did. But I
Yeah.
can tell you that um, that was definitely the non-mastered version that came out, because if you listen to some of them, you can even still hear the stick clicks on some of the recordings.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, yeah, I mean, I know Johnny had a copy of it, John Ortega, who played bass on it.
Yeah.
And when Trey fired him, he got really mad and just started sending it out to everybody, and I think that's how it got leaked, as far as that first bootleg on Satanic Records.
Ah, okay. Okay, this will be our last question. This is a good one. Will there ever be an Acheron reunion with you two again together? Come on, you know you should.
Well, I mean, I'll never say never to anything. Me and you have
Yeah.
always gotten along, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and we've never had any big problems ever that I can remember, and everything's been very mutual. And you left Florida because I know you hated Florida,
Right.
and so I mean, I didn't want to move because
Right.
I had a pretty steady job. So
Yeah.
um, we've gone on stage, like you said, and played at shows together. So there's always it's always a possibility. I
I
don't
look.
I don't put anything, you know, I like playing, and we had a lot of great times in Acheron. So if there
Yeah.
was a possibility to do something, it would definitely be something I would be like, sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
If it was if it was something really good, and
Yeah. Because I I agree with you. You know, if I I've I won't ever say never because I've said it before. I like broke up the band and I was like, I'm done. And then a year later, I'm doing it again and then take a break. And then you know how you get, sometimes you just get sick of shit for dealing with business or whatever.
Yeah.
But no, if I was ever to do any type of recording or a special show, Mike would definitely be first on the fucking list to fucking do something with. I'm not looking to. I'll never do another album with people I didn't play with before. You know what I'm saying? I'm not looking to do. I'm not saying I'm gonna do. I don't want people to think I'm gonna do another album when I'm not saying that. I think we're both concentrating on what we're doing now. But if someone offered, say, do a fucking 7-inch, a couple songs, I'd definitely be interested. Something that wouldn't take away from either of our bands that we could do on the side. Yeah, that would be interesting. And you never know what the future holds. And mentioned before, I love working with Mike. He's been a fucking friend for years. It's a win-win for me.
Yeah. I mean, especially if it was something like you said, getting the whole band back together again and that kind of thing would be a difficult task, I think,
Yeah,
for some of the other people that were in it. But
yeah,
not impossible, probably, but not easy either, maybe. But
yeah,
I think that some of those songs would be worth playing again live, that just because they're so classic, and that in itself would be worth doing it to
yeah.
me.
I
Uh,
mean, I look
Working on
at
new stuff is a little bit more difficult because we don't live in the same area. But
yeah,
as far as doing a reunion thing, that for sure could happen because it wouldn't be that hard to do.
yeah,
It would just be depending on who out of the older members that you'd want to play along with me and you.
yeah. I, but for anybody watching this, don't ever think there's going to be a Lex Talionis fucking reunion because Vincent Breeding. It's just that I haven't talked to that guy or heard, and he hasn't been a part of the scene for a long time, so I have no idea. And we all know he got caught up in some other shit that we won't talk about, but you know, it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, there's other people that were in the project that could
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
we could
I
work with
always
and
I
do it.
always said if we could get like, I mean, shit, Tony Black and fuck, even Belial, it's just like, there's possibilities, but like I said, that'd be something to talk about in the future. And uh good thing is most of the people I would work with is where Mike lives, so it might not be that hard of a deal to do.
Right. That's what I was. Tony came to my mind first, of course, too,
Yeah,
and he's definitely around and doing quite a bit of stuff. So he could easily jump in the situation with me and you. It would
yeah.
just be picking out that extra one other person, and
Hmm.
depending on who it would be. And I didn't even really, since I didn't play in a band with you and Belial together, but you did. He was in Acheron. That
Yep.
is a good choice too. I
Yep.
didn't even kind of think about that. That
Yep.
could definitely work. And there's still like you said, Pete is still around. I
Yep.
know he still plays with Tony. I don't know. I don't know too much about what's going on with that now or how your situation is with that. So, but there is definite possibilities.
Yeah. That's that was interesting to bring up. Put some ideas in our heads, but um, Pete, we were actually going to do some recording for kind of like just a few different songs with the original rights lineup. Um, but that didn't look like it manifested. I know Pete's not interested in playing like live. Pete's a great guy. You're going to be on stage with Ashron. You know exactly what you're getting into. It's not going to be if you don't if you're not into all this fucking crazy satanic shit. And yeah, I wouldn't come on stage either. So
Yeah, and that's completely understandable in that situation. Like I said, I don't know, but I know
yeah,
there was a problem with that before, a little
yeah,
bit here and there. So, but when you brought up Belial, I thought that hey, that could actually work, for sure. And he played on your stuff and even on one of the demos.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
to
So
me,
that,
that would probably be the best option,
yeah. Uh,
and it could work for sure.
yeah.
So there's always that possibility.
Yeah. Never say never. So,
Yeah, exactly.
okay, Mike. Well, I appreciate you being on, and good luck with the fucking new album. Like I said, everybody go out, Profound Lore Records, pick it up, order it today. It is definitely worth your fucking time and money. And anything you want to plug before we leave?
Oh, I think you've pretty much done it for me.
Right on.
That's
Oh,
awesome. Yeah, just who knows what the future will bring, and we'll definitely be doing some shows for
yeah.
sure. We're starting to talk about that, so that's gonna come into fruition as soon as we work some details out. And the album's out now, so just all I can say is check it out and see if you like it.
Hey. Okay, everybody, make sure you leave your comments for me and Mike. Let you know how I enjoyed the interview and the conversation. And we shall all see you on the dark side.